Alright guys, so I'm still here covering a lot of these low star servants in preparation for Lost Belt 7 Part 2 going to drop. It should be tomorrow after the live stream. Again, if you want to see me react to that live, I will be watching that over on my Twitch, which is linked down in the description down below. But as you guys know, when I do this low star legend series, I go class by class. We go Saber, Archer, Lancer, and then we just kind of keep doing one servant at a time from each class, just to kind of cycle through. That way we're not talking about like 80 Sabers in a row, then 80 Archers. It kind of like keeps it a little bit fresh as we go through, but there's not a whole lot of low star extra class servants, and I believe the only two that I have left to cover for the extra class is Angra Mainyu and Salieri, and I was like, you know what, let me just rip that band-aid off right now. Let me just rip it off. Let's talk about Angra Mainyu. It's really funny to me because we're probably going to get a really good servant announced tomorrow. Like, it's probably going to be some broken Lost Belt Part 2 servant, but then today we're going to talk about literally the worst servant in the game. So I was like, let's just go ahead and do a little discussion video on Angra Mainyu. I should probably have something like this up on the channel. And this is one of the most disappointing servants I think I've ever seen in the game, especially after Bazette got released. If you don't know, maybe you're an NA only player and you didn't see this happen, last year over on the JP version of the game, we got Bazette, and Bazette actually has a real counter mechanic. Like, she has this, but like infinitely better. And in fact, I believe I made a video talking about this, being like, dude, Angra Mainyu could finally be fixed because they could just give him the Bazette counter mechanic and it wouldn't be too broken, right? Because Angra Mainyu is not exactly a common servant. You really got to invest an absolute dump truck load of friend points into this guy to try to get him, unless you're stupid dummy lucky. He's basically like the 5-star of the friend point gacha, and it'd be really insane, but they didn't do that. So yeah, he was very, very disappointing, and because it was like the most obvious layup thing like possible, right? Because Angra Mainyu is very important to Bazette because of Fate Hollow Ataraxia, and so you would have thought that they would have just gone ahead and, buffed Angra Mainyu up as well, because the only buff this guy has gotten is on his 3rd skill, and spoiler alert, you need to bond 10 him to even do this interlude for a buff that's like not even remotely close to fixing this guy. So yeah, we're going to talk about Angra Mainyu today's video. As you guys can tell, it's more of a discussion video. I have the, the page pulled up here just so I can kind of talk and freely talk about this guy, because I was not going to go do gameplay of Angra Mainyu, okay? let me just keep it a stack with you. Let me keep it a buck. Let me be 100% honest. I was not going to bring Angra Mainyu to like a bunch of like challenge quests and trying to like force him to look even remotely good, because I was like, dude, that is not the kind of headache that I need right now. But if you guys are new to the channel, this is kind of common for me to do. We cover a lot of servants over here. I try to keep you guys up to date on everything FGO related, and at least try to keep up the daily FGO content grind. So if that sounds good to you, make sure you leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, peep all those links down in the description down below, mainly the Twitch, because again, we'll be reacting to, the Lost Belt stuff that's going to be coming out. Should be tomorrow morning at like 4:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, something around there. So yeah, I will be waking up extremely early to cover that. But yeah, with all that being said, let's just talk about some of the stuff that Angra Mainyu does. I mean, his hits are okay, I suppose. 0.79% NP gain is pretty solid, right? But he's only got 2 hits on his arts cards, meaning you're going to be really reliant on getting crits with this guy. You could say, oh, maybe he would be insane for doing that, because look at this absolutely Giga Chad massive quick buff he's able to get. I mean, starting off at 40% and getting all the way up to 200%, that's pretty good, right? But even then, his star gen stat itself is really low. With only 3 hits on the quick card, it's not going to be really enough to balance it out. It's just a very weird thing entirely. You could say that like the Avenger passives do kind of make up for some of his lack of NP gain, because if you've ever used any Avenger, right, like let's say you've used Jalter, you know that whenever they take just even a couple of hits, they refund like 50% of their NP. Like, this Avenger passive is so insane when it comes to like actually refunding your NP. Just because it's like a slight gust of wind comes your way, and then you're just able to get all of your NP back. Plus a little bit of passive NP gain is always really nice. It's 2%, and it might not seem like it's that much, but these things do actually build up, and sometimes they do help you out over time. Like, let's say you were at 88% NP, you get that 2%, and look at that with now one of like Waver's skills. If you're using him with your Angra Mainyu for some reason, boom, you can go ahead and actually fire your NP. Like, it doesn't come up like all the time, but it is nice to kind of have, because sometimes it'll come up, it'll give you that little bit of extra NP that you needed, although obviously not as good as like someone like Merlin getting 5%. But Yeah, that's about like all the praise I can really give to Angra Mainyu. I guess I could also say that his second skill has the NP reduction. That's kind of good. The attack reduction is 30% for 3 turns. Like, this isn't terrible as far as like a debuff is concerned, but realistically, like in the modern era, we should just take this second skill, this first skill, smush them together, right? Because if we did that, this would actually be a really solid debuff skill, reducing one enemy's critical attack chance by 50% for 3 turns while also lowering their attack by 30% for 3 turns and denying them 1 charge. That's some pretty nice, like all things considered, some nice survivability, right? Because this is going to pretty much, prevent you from getting crit and just obliterated, which Angra Mainyu does need because he has like no HP. Because he's considered like a 1-star servant or something along those lines, or it might be a 3-star. I might be getting it mixed up, but regardless, he's not considered to be a high-starred servant. And so this is really good. Being able to like protect himself and the party by denying an enemy their NP charge, that's really good. And he's going to be taking less damage because of the attack thing, right? Like, that's all good. It's just, fundamentally, it all just falls apart. Because even over here, you could be like, the guts is really nice. And then buffing up his quick performance can be really good, even though he's not really a quick servant. It could still be nice because he's got double quick cards. If this was the arts buff instead of the quick buff, he'd be a bit more nutty because you could spam the NP. The problem is that fundamentally what you're building up to for Angra Mainyu is just absolutely nothing, right? It's really cool to use because when you use Angra Mainyu's NP, he changes sprite, he turns into like the black Angra Mainyu demon looking thing, and it's super cool. I know when I was first playing the game, I was like, dude, that's got to be super broken, that's got to be super sick. He's like one of the only servants that does this. And then everybody, as soon as I was getting into the game, was like, no, that guy is absolutely terrible. He's garbage. And he does like what? Like a maximum of like 20,000 damage to the opponent, right? Like you take all this damage and then you do like absolute peanuts back to them. Like you do no damage to them at all whatsoever, right? It's supposed to be like a counter type thing where like all the damage that he takes is like does all that damage back to his opponents. But there's like something called true damage in FGO, which is what he's able to do, which is nice because I believe it like bypasses all defenses and stuff along those lines. But it also doesn't actually do real damage to them, right? It's really bad, right? If you don't like fully understand it, don't worry, like it's just bad, right? It's like it doesn't allow you to do the same thing that say Bazette is able to do, right? Because Bazette actually gets like a real reflection multiplier, and she's actually able to do insane damage back to people after she hits them. And it's kind of the whole reason that Angra Mainyu is just like unusable, right? Like somebody who could tell you like, oh, you could probably do like a meet. It's like, no. It's like the guy is unrunnable. You do not ever use this person. He is literally a trophy servant in name only. I believe there was like one time that Angra Mainyu was actually kind of decent for a battle, and again, this was about like 5 years ago, so you correct my memory if I'm wrong in the comments, but I believe it was like some like really high defense crab boss battle, because like they had this insane defense, so you couldn't really do damage to them. So like one of the more meta strats that people were using was like waver curse over time, and you just like slowly curse the enemies to death. Or if you had Angra Mainyu, because he did true damage and it like bypassed all of that, you could just slowly over time pelt them with Angra Mainyu's NP to slowly take them out. I believe that was the quest. If it wasn't that one exactly, someone will point out which one it was, but it was something along those lines where like specifically because he had like true damage, you could kind of not burst them down, but take them out a little bit faster because you were doing like 20,000 every single turn as opposed to like a couple thousand with Waver's Curse, right? That was like the only time people were like, dude, we could actually use Angra Mainyu. He actually has a purpose. But outside of that, the dude is unrunnable, right? Unironically, the only thing they kind of have to do to make him a bit better is just fix the NP. Just give him an NP buff where you just do a little Bazette type thing where you actually make his counters actually mean something, and the guy is a completely different servant, because then it's actually kind of worth going for his NP and trying to get these like big swings and counter damage. It can still be a little bit rough, but he does still have the guts to kind of protect himself and kind of keep himself alive, and make sure that he doesn't just get absolutely washed. But even still, we need to do like a couple of other things here, right? Like I think something that would help Angra Mainyu out specifically as well, and this is just speculation if they go ahead and they actually fix his NP, but something like a 50 to a 100% battery, right? So just like you could enter into the fight, instantaneously get his NP, and then start, racking up some of that damage, right? Some of that counter damage. That would help him out a lot, because That's pretty much all he does. Like, these two skills are just kind of designed to keep him alive and make sure that he doesn't just get obliterated. But then, they kind of like retroactively, as you'll see when he dropped, he did not have a guts. They went back and gave him a guts to kind of make it a bit better. Because originally it was like, well, hopefully lowering their attack and denying them crits is going to be enough to keep your basically 8,000 HP servant alive. And, well, I don't think it really worked out. Or technically, maybe you could say almost 9,000, because I don't believe these stats show the foes either. So it's like, ooh, man, you gotta really hope that's gonna keep him alive. But then they gave him the guts to maybe help him out. But the main thing he needs is a change to his NP, right? They need to actually like rework kind of how this works a little bit. But I can understand maybe them being a little apprehensive, because the difference between him and I guess Bazette technically is that Bazette technically does damage to one person, right? Like, somebody attacks her and then she does damage back to her, but she taunts herself. So funny enough, you could even use Bazette for farming, right? You could actually use her to like actually farm people, because everybody in that node will actually attack her and then she'll clap back on everybody in that node, thus farming technically without even needing to have like a damaging NP. But maybe they're a little apprehensive because his thing already hits everybody, right? So, like, if all 3 people attacked him in one turn, he would do 3 hits of counter to everybody that rotation, and you could really rack up a lot of damage if he had, like, say, Bazette's exact same multiplier. But maybe just, like, raise it a little bit, like, maybe a little bit higher than 3, considering how rare this guy is. If this was, like, I don't even know, just raise to an acceptable level for getting... and like 5 total copies of Angra Mainyu, maybe, right? Because most people are sitting around here. I think my Angra Mainyu is only like NP2. So, like, I don't know, bro. Let's raise it a little bit. Like, maybe, I don't know, like 20 to 50, I think. Because Bazette's, I believe, goes up to like 150%. Like, she gets like an actual like NP modifier for her counter damage. For Angra Mainyu, let's just, I don't know. Like, I know you don't want to make it as good as Bazette, right? Because Bazette's like a limited servant that they really want you to pull for, and that adds a lot of value to her. But come on, like, let's make this trophy servant actually runnable. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'm just thinking, like, kind of fix up his multiplier for the counter damage, right? Put him more in line with Bazette, because we know they can do this now because Bazette exists. And then maybe throw a battery his way, right? That way he can actually just start using his NP, right? Because, again, his natural, like, NP gain with the the lower hits on the arts cards are not as good. But I would love to hear what you guys think Angra Mainyu could do, because Angra Mainyu is one of those servants that is like really important to the lore of Fate, and it's baffling kind of how bad this guy is. I get that he said that he's like really weak and everything, but if you've read Hollow Ataraxia, that boy Angra Mainyu put in some work. And again, he's kind of like the whole reason the Grail is messed up in like Fate Zero and Fate Stay Night and all those other series. So like, this like really important person for like how everything in Fate works is literally the worst servant in the game. I don't know, maybe they find a little bit of irony in that, but I think he should be buffed. So let me know all that in the comments down below. Let me know what you would do to fix Angra Mainyu to make him at least worth running, right? Just something that makes him at least worth using, even if it's for a meme. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace, late guys.